Twisted 1.21 isn't very enjoyable. The update has way too much janky, unpredictable tornado behavior, bland or strange looking tornadoes, and repetitive nature that makes the game way less fun to play. I want this video to serve as a way to address mine and many others' criticisms about the current update, as well as some changes that could be done to fix them. This is not made with the intention of hating on the game or the staff team, but rather as constructive criticism instead. I will also be going over the positive sides of the update, as those are just as important when creating an overall better experience for the following updates. The tornado visuals in 1.21 are currently way too similar between each tornado. They all are usually just the same smooth cones and stovepipes that make memorable chases a rarity. Even when you do get a tornado that looks somewhat different from the rest, they tend to just look really ugly and unrealistic with wrinkly sidewinders and giant massive wall tornadoes. Without the tornado shape variants, the only other thing to look forward to in a chase is the wind speeds of the tornado, which isn't something that should solely be focused on. Even when getting a tornado that is strong, it's super difficult to tell that it is unless you're looking at velocity. This is due to the fact that the meshes don't look like they're rotating at all, and multi-vortex is only present while the tornado is a floater at the beginning of a tornado's lifespan. Another thing that doesn't help with the lack of variance is the tornado widths. On higher risks, there are way too many tornadoes that are under 1,000 feet, and getting anything higher than 2,000 is way too rare. There should be higher chances on average to get larger tornadoes on higher end risks and smaller tornadoes on lower end ones. As a result, having either wedges in lower end risks and drill bits in higher end risks would be more impactful. The power diversity in 1.21 is all very much the same. All of the risks in the game have roughly the same wind speed range, with high risk for instance having all of the tornadoes in the 200 to 220 mile per hour range, and other risks like moderate and especially enhanced risks having a hard time producing anything near that level, which again creates no variance between the risks being played and the overall power of the tornadoes in general. A good point of reference to have while creating much better variance and balance is 1.19. This is because it is typically regarded as the best update in Twisted for its overall balance of multiple aspects. 1.19 used to have many variants to how a tornado could look through stagnant tornado meshes, which had a much clearer motion when spinning, and all of them made chases feel super unique and interesting. Another thing that 1.19 does better than 1.21 is size equals strength, which essentially means the bigger a tornado starts off as, the stronger it may become. Something about getting 300 mile per hour tornadoes that are smaller than the hospital just doesn't feel nearly as impactful as one that is a wedge. A current issue with 1.21.1 specifically is the absolutely horrendous rendering. While this is most likely Roblox screwing the game over yet again, I cannot stand not seeing farther than Prior Lake with max graphics and render distance. Aerial shots and even looking off in the distance just look super strange without the foliage and structures. This also for some reason affects specifically the rocket probes, where after a certain distance they will just unrender, which causes the winds red and the UI just to remain frozen there, and the only way to fix it is to respawn the Dominator 3. This honestly just makes rocket probes super tedious to use, since it has to be within a certain range of the tornado, which invalidates using them at all. This is relatively minor compared to the other things, however the records right now are way too high. There is absolutely no reason to have tornadoes reaching 400 miles per hour or 8 mile wide tornadoes that literally slab the whole map. While the records should be fairly unrealistic compared to real life, they shouldn't reach the magnitude 1.21 has. For example, 1.19's width and wind speed records were 2.5 miles wide and 359 miles per hour. This was the perfect amount of balancing for records, and it makes getting them much more feasible for everyone. A general con of having insanely high level tornadoes is that something that typically would be insane in any other update, like a 2 miler for instance, gets immediately overshadowed and dwarfed by any tornado above 4 miles wide in 1.21. While tornadoes are supposed to be unpredictable, sometimes it's a bit too ridiculous. It's a nice touch that some less than typical deviance is included in some tornado tracks, but it gets out of hand when tornadoes have not one, not 2, but 10 shifts greater than 90 degrees. The main root cause of this is the sidewinder tornadoes, and while they can be cool, it doesn't need to be quite as extreme. Shifting doesn't necessarily have to be as bland as 1.20s, but they need to be more like 1.19s, with larger shifts that can only occur once or twice. Another aspect that needs to be adjusted is the speed at which tornadoes reach their peak strength. Many consider that time to be unpredictable, but always too short. Here are some examples of tornadoes that had peaked far before the middle of the tornado track, which should not be as common as it is. Compare all of this to something like the 331 tornado in 1.17, where it formed southwest of Hibbing and continued to gradually strengthen and grow to the point where it peaked on top of Waukesha. While this is an insane amount of time for a tornado to strengthen, and it doesn't need to happen every time obviously, it does make chasing a singular tornado a lot longer and more enjoyable than it just instantly peaking and the chaser moving on to the next storm. Tornado size is another far too unpredictable part of the chase because of the severe lack of steady growth in tornadoes. While rapid and seemingly random spikes are a possibility and should happen in chases, large and strong tornadoes typically are only caused by such events in 1.21. A topic like this one is fairly self-explanatory, but storms tend to spawn too close to the map border that they will naturally move towards. For example, on days with storm motion moving southeast, the most common spawn is usually near Hibbing. On northeast storm motion days, the storms spawn near Funkley and Welchel, or they spawn at Cherokee County and shift east off the map instantly. The other issue with the storm spawns is when there finally is a storm that has a potential to have a tornado track from off the map to the other side, it really just has a chance to shift and go away from the map border, which is a huge issue, because nobody wants to sit there and wait for a new storm while there's a perfectly good tornado that just straight up won't enter the map. Another problem this brings is that if a tornado leaves the map too early, it can essentially take out 1/3 of the chase. This is because almost all high risks have 3 tornadoes maximum, which is just too little. To fix this, the amount of tornadoes on high and moderate risk should be brought up to maximize their potential, and recycle should be a lot more common as well on all risks. One of the best aspects of 1.21 as an update is the vehicle customization. It's really cool being able to change so much about a vehicle, like lift height, rims, and tires. It's also neat getting different variants of certain vehicles, like the Doghouse in Tiv 2 for instance, which prevents the issue of everyone using the exact same vehicle every time. The game is honestly pretty ahead of its time for this aspect, since no other storm chasing game really has this currently. Looking forward to seeing how customization is expanded upon in future updates. The most recent updates have really shown how much better the map design is, such as the Kisota Health Hospital being absolutely massive and the NWS office having a high level of detail. There's a lot more detail going into them, which gives the map a much better Midwestern feel and it gives it more character. Looking at the new Starbuck in 1.21.1 just makes me more excited to see the new map coming in 1.22, since the design is so unique and interesting compared to the rest. 1.21 has a pretty good idea of how tornadoes should grow and shrink when strengthening and dying respectively. In the previous update 1.20, tornadoes would almost always lift at their peak width, which was very strange to see. However, 1.21 has tornadoes grow very large from the original funnel size and shrink to become very small at the end of their path, which is really cool to see unfold. The arcade style of Twisted has been making a major comeback recently, with the game continuing to represent awesome, albeit unrealistic, storm features like overly tight and wide wind fields, vibrant storm colors, and debris physics that make the game stand out amongst others. This is definitely going in the right direction, and I would love to see it improved upon further. In 1.20, tornadoes were commonly very strong, and the interceptors were not adjusted to be optimal for a typical high-risk chase. Well, this is partially the community's fault because we saw the stats and complained about them being too overpowered before seeing what the tornadoes were actually like. In Modern Twisted though, this is not an issue at all, and interceptors are the most balanced they've ever been, which is really cool. The UI overhaul for 1.21 looks so much better compared to the previous updates. It has its own pretty unique style to it, and it fits nicely on screen. Keeping the style for a whole lot longer is the way to go, and it would be cool to see more done with it in some other planned features. And that's basically all I want to cover in this video. Big thanks to Fusion for helping me out with some of the criticisms and parts of the script. I hope that this will help with making the game much more enjoyable, and I wanted most of these to go in depth on why it's an issue and what can be done to fix them. I also wish for these to be taken into account when making any new updates for the game, which should be the main goal for any video like this. Oh yeah, and I promise I will actually upload another chase video next time.